So if you're here in person, say so, and if you're here virtually as well, just say it to the speaker. So myself, Joe Gravelisi, I'm present. Matt Wolford.
Here.
Anayo Osweki.
Here.
Okay, Lori Manzo.
Here.
Deb Frank.
Here.
Layla Pietri.
Here.
And Dean Harris.
Here.
And Judy Gosling.
Here.
Great. Thank you very much. So the next item that we'll move to is ratification of the minutes from the July meeting. Those were distributed to everybody last Friday. So I'd ask for unanimous consent to ratify those minutes. Is there any, do I hear any objections? Actually, well, sorry, can I make a motion to ratify the minutes for the July meeting?
I second.
Second. Any objections? Seeing none? Okay. So we'll move to the next item of the agenda, which is our monthly finances update. And for that, we'll go to our treasurer, Anayo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys have had a good day. I'm sorry not to be there in person. I'm suffering a little bit of a cold, and I don't want to spread it to anyone. The current balance is $913,996.44. This increase is due to an interest being posted, and again, this is provided to us by Stephen Newton. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Any questions for the treasurer's update? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Senior Citizen Home Repairs Program. I want to thank everyone for your patience with this. I know that I believe it was the June meeting or the July meeting, we passed the vote to ratify this, and we've had some technical difficulties with getting the application online. To prove that we're almost ready to go and ready to start accepting applications, I wanted to show you where we were at and let everyone take a look at the application. I'll point out where there's still one piece that I'm working with the IT department on getting a few things fixed and up and ready to go. But I am just going to present this up for everyone to take a look at. Let me make sure that this works. Share my screen. Yeah. Okay, so I believe that you should see this application up here and on your screens in front of you. For people that are seeing this on Zoom, are you able to see this? Yep.
I am.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
So as you can see, we're trying to do a couple things. First of all, be really clear and upfront about how the program works sort of up at the beginning so people understand some of the requirements and guidelines, and then kind of walk people through the steps on how to complete an application. So this cover page will be something that you'll be able to access from the city website. We'll come up with some sort of catchy URL for it. And we'll also make sure that information about it is disseminated through the senior center and through the community liaisons, 311, so folks know about it. It starts off with a description of the program. As you can see, the revere.org/URL is a placeholder for we're figuring out where that's going to live. We give examples of the types of projects, right? So as we discussed, we gave some examples of what we would consider to be age-in-place type projects, accessibility projects for folks that are aging. But eligible projects aren't limited to these, so we're going to welcome and review applications for anything, but it's just going to be based on if they fit the criteria of supporting senior homeowners as they age in place. But we just present these as kind of an example of types of projects that we're looking for. So as we say right here, applicants will submit their income and residency information along with a quote and a contractor's estimate describing the work and its cost. And so then there'll be a review by the city. We have sort of an ad hoc committee of city staff across planning and community development, the senior center, health and human services, to review the applications for feasibility and alignment with program guidelines and make sure that the contractor is properly licensed. We're going to respond within 1 business day to let people know that they've received the application, and then processing time will vary based on the complexity of the application. So we list here, as we discussed, the guidelines. So 60 or older, own and occupy the home in Revere, be a year-round resident, and meet these income guidelines, so at or below 80% of area median income, and we have it listed right here, right on the front before you even start applying, so people know transparently, what the guidelines are and where they come from, which is based on the HUD income limits for the Boston, Cambridge, Quincy metro area. So yeah, this is just the description of the program. Feel free as we go through this, if you have any questions, comments, to just interrupt, or take them down and let me know at the end. So next page gives you a checklist of the applicant, of the materials that you need. So proof of your age, proof of your residency. We will go to the assessor's office, and make sure that everything matches up and aligns between who's submitting the application and who the owner of the property is, and we'll reach out to the owner if there's any discrepancy there. Documentation of income, homeowner's insurance, and then the quote or estimate for the repair and photos of the area needing repair. So this is where they put in their address information, verifying that they're an owner occupant in Revere. And then this is where so you'll have to list all household members. So we anticipate that most, senior citizen households will be, 1 or 2 people. But if there are 3 or 4 or 5 people in the house, whether they be minor children or adult children or unrelated family members, that does count as a household for purposes of this program. So the household size is what determines if you're eligible or not based on income, but also every member of the household's income counts. So it's important to note, both for purposes of filling out the application, but also in communicating with folks that, like if there's someone, an adult child of the homeowner that lives in the home and has a full-time job, their income counts towards eligibility for this. So that's just important to keep in mind. That's part of it. So folks will put in their name, relationship to the applicant, and their income. This is the part that I'm trying to get fixed with IT. So there, as you can see, these red stars represent a mandatory field before you can go any further in the application. But it makes you put in your employer name, position, salary, etc., which is what we do on the first-time homebuyer application. But as you can imagine, we actually anticipate that most of the applicants won't be employed. They'll probably be retired. So we want to create like a box. This is like the last sticking point before this is ready to post. And I'm not a computer engineer, so I can't speak to how complex it is to do this. But we want to put some sort of like box at the top that just says like, are you employed, retired, not working, whatever the case may be. And then if you are employed, then the box would pop up that you fill in your employment information. And if you're not, you can skip this question and just provide your Social Security income or, whatever the case may be. So that's the part that we're trying to get fixed, and I hope will be done within days. And so this is where I imagine it's going to be more, valid or interesting here or applicable to these applicants, which is if you're receiving any rental income, pensions, retirement income, any business income for folks that might like own small businesses, or interest or dividends from stocks. That's the actual income that we probably usually expect people applying for this program to receive. And so this is where they would put that in and then upload documentation of it. And same for all the members of their household. Next piece is asset verification. And then we ask a few mandatory questions: if they're party to a lawsuit, if their property's been foreclosed upon, if they've been declared bankrupt, if there's outstanding judgments against them, etc. If they answer no to any of these questions, they may not be eligible. We might have to follow up for additional information. And then an e-signature. So that is it. That is the entirety of the application. We try to make it comprehensive without being too confusing, be relatively user-friendly in terms of being right up front about what documents there are. So we're just working through that one last kind of like glitch to get it good to go, but otherwise it should be ready soon. So with that, I'd like to put it out there if anyone has any questions, comments, feedback, things you'd change, general commentary.
Sorry, Joe. I do have one question.
Sure.
For senior citizens that are interested in this program but aren't necessarily tech savvy, is there a way for them to be able to get access to this program and have somebody help them fill out the papers?
Yes. So we are anticipating, in fact, that most people will apply for this by going in person to the senior center, where senior center staff will be trained on how to basically fill this application out with you or for you. So I'm going to be setting up some meetings with senior center staff and kind of running through like test applications before it's good to go. But the to complete the application, you can bring your materials to the senior center, and they will like go through the actual upload. The only thing that we are going to ask people to provide, even if they're not tech savvy and they're not using it themselves, there needs to be some contact email that you put in as like what's attached to your application for processing purposes. So we ask that when people come in and apply, even if they don't, if they have like a relative's email address or someone else's, that would be ideal. But if not, the senior center staff can help with that and help, put an email alias or something that can just be used as like their kind of like username, I guess, if that makes sense. But other than that, there will be no need to, actually be online to fill it out on the web. You can go down to the senior center and fill it out there. So, and not only that, there's going to be a pretty extensive outreach campaign once this is good to go, both in person at the senior center, through the newspaper, Revere TV, et cetera, letting people know that this program is available and that they can go to the senior center for help with their application. So thank you for bringing that up.
When is the deadline for this
For
program?
explaining. Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry. What is the deadline for this program?
Sure. So the funds, there won't be a hard deadline. They'll be rolling. So the funds will be spent until they've been exhausted. So I think it's 50,000 in total, and then a maximum of 5,000 per project. So it could be, 10 projects. It could be 12, 13, depending on the size of them. But the applications will be accepted until funds have been exhausted, and they'll be reviewed on a first come, first served basis. So every application that comes in has a timestamp associated with it, and they'll be, reviewed first come, first serve. Yep. Other questions, comments, thoughts? So I'd like to sincerely apologize that this isn't online yet. I really, it was my goal to have it up and running by Labor Day, but very appreciative and grateful for the help of the IT department with the city on helping get this going. I certainly wouldn't be able to build it myself, so I'm glad to have the help and the support. And I know we've had some questions. We had a few people call into the planning department and ask about this. It's coming, and we really look forward to it. We're excited to be able to provide the support for residents. So thank you for your patience. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Do I see a hand up, Judy, or no? Okay. So the next item is also an update on a kind of simmering project, which is the RFP for excess properties that we talked about. This is another one that's moved a bit slowly, although I think due to good reasons. You may recall that I think it was a total of 5 properties that were declared surplus by the city council, and RFPs were prepared to put them out to bid for those that might be interested in bidding on them for purposes of affordable housing or similar uses. But there are a few that, it was complicated, whether it be like conservation land issues, flood issues, utility issues. So we're trying to kind of work through all of those before determining which ones are buildable. But there is one that I believe will be advertised tomorrow, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So I will report back to you once that one has gone out. I've heard anecdotally that there are a few nonprofits that we've talked to that are interested in potentially bidding on, one of these properties for purposes of like an affordable home ownership project, like a duplex townhouse type of setup, which I think we'd all be really excited about. So stay tuned for more on that. We're hopeful that that comes to fruition soon. Any questions on that piece? Anayo, I think you must have gave me the cough through the Zoom. Okay.
I tried. Not to. Trust me, what I have, you don't want.
That's all right. So we're going to move on to talk a bit about the ADU loan concept that we discussed at the last meeting and that I sent out to everyone via email. Again, I'm going to hit pause on putting forth a vote on this just because I don't want to have multiple balls up in the air. I want to get the senior citizen repair program up and running and taking applications before we open up a new application and build it out. But I do want to make sure that we're all kind of aligned on what we expect that program to look like. Just want to make sure, does anyone not know what I'm talking about before I pull it up? Just make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page. Great. Okay, so I'm going to pull up for everybody. I'd sent this out via email, but I just wanted a chance for us to discuss it all together. A terms and conditions for an ADU loan program. So I believe everyone, if you're on the Zoom, can you just let me know if you can see this, the ADU program terms and conditions?
Yes, it's clear.
Terrific. So as you can recall from our previous meetings, the purpose of this is to help people create ADUs and also rent them at an affordable price to folks that need them. I can tell you that we're seeing multiple ADUs come each week before a site plan review for the city. So the amount of people that are looking to build ADUs is increasing. People are aware that it's an option for them, but I also know that people kind of learn upfront that it's an expensive process, right? It can be complicated, and helping people with a forgivable loan to help with some of those construction costs can help some families that might require this rental income to help them be able to stably live in their home moving forward. B, perhaps provide housing to a relative, their son or daughter or family or brother or cousin or whatever the case may be. But then also C, we're asking for this to be rented out at the affordable rate, right? So a rate that's considered affordable based on HUD guidelines for 5 years. So we kind of talked through a bit of this, and I just wanted to show everyone this isn't like a formal application, but this is what I'm going to base the application off of, is these program guidelines, these terms and conditions. So we talked about the purpose, we talked about the terms. So it would be a maximum loan of $10,000 per ADU project, and we'll fund up to 5 of these projects. And then over the course of 5 years, the loan would be forgiven by 20%, so long as the unit remains in compliance with the affordability guidelines. So this is an owner occupancy requirement, so you have to own and occupy the property throughout the term of the 5-year loan. Have to comply with all building and zoning codes and obtain necessary permits, and then also can't be delinquent, for any payment of taxes, fees, assessments, etc. So the rent will be certified each year by the city as not exceeding the affordable rent limit at 100% of AMI. So this is based on HUD, a HUD formula, and then we would let the homeowner know what that rate is for the year, and then they would verify through lease documents that it's in compliance. I believe for this year this would be around something like $2,000 a month. So it's not we're not talking about extremely deeply affordable housing, but it is housing that's more affordable and attainable, at least to someone that's kind of in that working class income range. So the lease would be submitted to the city for review and approval each year for 5 years. And then throughout that period of time, right, the city would be verifying continued occupancy. You can't hold it empty. You need to be renting it out at that affordable rate. And then if you sell the property, cease to reside at it, so you keep it as an investment property but move out, or rent it above the allowable rate, then you're required to pay back the unforgiven portion of the loan. So those are the program guidelines, and then there will be an application essentially that lays out these guidelines and asked to collect a lot of the same information that we collected in the senior repairs program, and that'll be how that will operate. My goal and my hope, but I want to just take questions or see if folks have proposed modifications or concerns. My hope would be that we would get the senior repairs application online, hopefully in the next couple days, get that moving. Maybe at our next meeting, vote to approve this program and move it forward and work to get an application online, and then maybe actually take applications once we've exhausted the senior repair funds, but at least have the application ready to go and have the program approved so that we can start it. I do think there's a lot of interest in building ADUs right now. We want to make sure that we're there to support people that might need it. So with that, I want to turn it over to any questions, comments, feedback.
Okay, this is the program for the 2 and 3 families home that are where the owner live in one of the occupancies.
So this is for anyone that's building an ADU on their property. So that can be a single family, it can be a 2-family, it can be a 3-family. It looks like, again, I don't know this for 100% fact, but it seems like most of the ADUs that are coming through are either 2 families that are adding a 3rd unit as an ADU, or a single family that's adding an ADU. And it's usually a basement ADU, right? Or kind of what we would call an in-law apartment. We're not seeing a lot of external ADUs. You see those more in more suburban settings where they might have a big yard and they build a accessory dwelling apartment outside that's separate with a separate entrance. Most of the ADUs here tend to be internal, like a basement or a back room or something, or building an addition onto an existing house. That's what they mostly look like. The rules allow for kind of all different types of configurations, but practically speaking, that's what they mostly look like in the city of Revere.
But the owner have to live on the property, the owner.
Yeah, so for this particular program, it's for owner occupants only. So you have to be an owner occupant of the property to receive this ADU loan. You do not need to be an owner occupant under the state law that was passed last year to build an ADU on your property, but you do need to in order to receive this loan. So this loan is really targeted specifically for, we think about residents, homeowners that either, they themselves may need this ADU, may need this rental income to support their ability to continue living in the property, or their ability to rent it out at an affordable rate, to folks that may need moderately priced housing. So that's really the goal in promoting this loan program. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Joe, just for clarity, this is sequential, so it's going to be the senior repair program, and we go through those funds, and then we move into the ADU.
That would be my preference. I'm open to anyone else's, if anyone wants to say, hey, Joe, I'd like to make a motion to pass this now, and then it's our job as city staff to just go do it. I'm fully supportive. That's your prerogative as a board. So I'll just say I would suggest and recommend and request that that be the process that we go through, that we get the senior repair program online, that we approve this program in form, and then I anticipate that the senior repair program will probably expend its funding relatively quickly. If I'm wrong, I will come back here and say I was wrong, and we might change the sequence of how things go. But that would be my thought, is that we get that up and running, at least get it started before we start this program, just to make sure that we're not, that we're providing the appropriate level of customer service to everyone that's applying for every program, and that we're not opening up 2 big application rounds at once. That would be my recommendation.
Can we put in the to start the process now, though? To get the application and everything else online?
We can. My request to the board would be that we wait until we get everything that we asked for the senior repairs. Just because we're still trying to get the last kinks worked out, and then once the application is done to our liking, we need to get it onto a certain URL. It needs to be promoted on the city website, go to the mayor's office for communications. So I'd rather just line the ducks up that way. I get where you're coming from, and I don't disagree, you know, but I would say that next meeting would be when I would say I'd come and ask if we could approve it and kind of start getting the ball rolling of getting the application online.
Okay, I'm just new to the process, so no problem.
No,
Sounds good.
I completely agree with a lot of what you're saying and where you're coming from. Yep. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank everyone for their work on this. You know, I know we had a few committee meetings where we met separately. You know, we had some calls about this. We distributed via email, and I think everyone's participation and cooperation has been super helpful. So thank you for that. Moving on, another item that we're working on that I also want to make some progress on is putting out sort of a request for an open call for housing proposals. So as you may recall, we've gotten a few kind of, I'll call them ad hoc requests over the last couple of years to support, you know, specific housing projects that have been built in the community. You know, one that we obviously approved was the funding for the 110 Ocean project for supportive housing. You know, and then there was another proposal that came in that we were a little bit less sure of, you know, that whether that made sense for us. And I think we all agreed that it makes sense for us to put together some transparent guidelines on, you know, here are the criteria that we use to determine if we fund a project or not, and create an application for it. And then also create funding rounds that are based on how much funding we have available, and set a deadline, right? And have people come up after they submit their applications and come and give a presentation, much like others have done, about the project they're doing, you know, why they think it makes sense, etc. I sent this out to everybody, but I just want to, again, I'm on a tear of sharing my screen, so I'm just going to do it again and show this call for applications, which I believe you should all see in front of you. Okay, let me know if you can see that, folks that are on the Zoom.
I can see it.
Great. So here's what we put together, and this was iterative based on some feedback that we got at the last meeting, and I think from some of you via email, so thank you for that. All proposals have to create and maintain housing units affordable to those at 80% AMI or less. That's our task, you know, as a board. We would make $150,000 available in the first round of funding. So this is based on, if you remember, the budget activity that we did a few months ago, where we laid out a spreadsheet of what we have in the fund, what we've kind of already allotted, and then what we plan on spending on things like the ADU program or home ownership initiatives. This kind of additional bucket, what I'll call it, is what we kind of are viewing as being for all other types of projects. So this could be for extremely low income rental projects or supportive housing or really anything that fits our guidelines. But that would be the bucket of funding that we'd consider it for. No limit on the number of projects that may be funded until funds are exhausted. So if we get, as a board, you know, 15 $10,000 proposals and we think they're all great, we can fund all of them. Or if we get one proposal that we think is really phenomenal, that our $150,000 would make all the difference in the world in getting it done, then we could allocate all of it to that. It leaves a lot of flexibility for us to discuss, you know, what makes sense. Which I think makes sense, right? We want to make sure that we're being flexible, that we're being adaptable, and that we're considering small scale and larger scale investments based on what makes sense for the project. So we added a few things that, you know, the only like mandatory requirement to request funding is to fit our goal of creating or maintaining affordable housing units. But we put a particular emphasis on a couple things. So supporting the creation or preservation of housing for existing Revere residents. We can't make that mandatory, as we've discussed, like under state law, all these affordable housing projects have a certain cap on the number of units that are like local preference. First would be an open lottery for anybody. But we would be preferential to proposals that max out the local preference, that max out the amount that are dedicated to current Revere residents, Or like another good example is that 110 Ocean project. Part of it was 1-for-1 replacing literally existing units in that congregate home for longtime Revere residents that have been there for a long, long time, and they have the right to return. So it's literally preserving the units for current Revere residents. So we put a really high priority on that. We would put an emphasis or priority on applications that allow us to leverage other funding sources. So I know we've talked about this a lot, where the power of our $50,000, say, while not nothing, is certainly not enough to build even one unit of affordable housing, as we all know. But if our investment can help in unlocking state support, federal support, private philanthropic support, if we're a force multiplier and us putting in our support helps unlock additional funding, we would prioritize that over an ask of, say, we have a $100,000 gap in our project and we would take out a loan to cover it, but your $10,000 can help reduce that. We wouldn't say no to that necessarily. It's just less prioritized, I think, versus if we put in $50,000, it could unlock our eligibility for a $2 million Commonwealth Builder grant or some other type of grant program that would really help us stack up the benefit and invest further in residents. And then we'll also add some additional weight to applications that support residents at or below 60% of AMI. I think a lot of our other bigger initiatives that we're talking about doing for the trust, so ADUs, first-time homebuyer support, doing, I know we've talked about subsidizing like deed-restricted condo units is something that we've considered doing, or not condo units, like units within a multifamily home. We've talked about that as a possibility. Or if we had a bigger budget, like acquiring properties themselves or deed restricting properties. We want to do those things to support home ownership and like kind of moderate income range. But I think if we can use this bucket to support some of the more deeply affordable, I think that's valuable. So those are the things that we have as kind of points of emphasis. We're happy to change any of these or add things to it, but that's a starting point. And then this would have a deadline. So unlike some of our other projects where it's until funds are exhausted, this would have a deadline. We would give people like, say, 2 months. We'd let them come up after their application's submitted to explain at the next meeting. And then we would have at the following meeting after the applications are closed, we'd have a chance to deliberate and vote and determine how many projects we want to approve. If any, right? We might get none that meet our criteria and our needs, and we just keep the funds and roll them into the next cycle or into the next year. I know I talked a lot, so I'm gonna do my best to be quiet and just see if folks have either questions, comments, or additional points of emphasis they'd want to add or change or anything like that. Going once. I'm going to take this as we're all in agreement. I'm not trying to be glib. I think this is something that's really important. I want to make sure that this document reflects the conversations that we've all had in these meetings and offline. And I hope that we're all kind of in agreement that this is a sensible way to do it and try to allocate the remaining funds.
Joe, I think it's definitely better than the way it's been, where people have come in and we kind of make decisions, but there could be other people out there with better ideas that haven't come forward. This gives everybody an opportunity to present their ideas to the trust fund board, and we can decide on which ones are the best for the city.
Agreed. So thank you for advocating for that. I know that's something that you've been trying to get going all along, and it was a good idea. And I think that we'll move towards, I'll bring something to everyone at the next meeting that we'll vote on, approving the application and also approving a timeline for it. And we can talk about that at that time. Any other questions or comments on that agenda item? No? Okay, seeing none. Very, very quickly, So we've received a few additional applications for the first-time home buyer down payment assistance program. So we're continuing to try to get all of those funds out the door. But as Deb knows, one thing that I've been trying to do is get in touch with other cities and towns and just learn more about how they leverage other, programs and ways to support people through first-time home that are on the first-time home buyer path. There's no perfect answer, but I think there's a lot of communities that struggle to flesh out these types of programs for all the reasons we've already talked about, right? Because of that narrow range of folks that qualify for it. But we're considering a few things. I think that we've seen that some communities have had success with sort of marketing and pushing people towards the 1+ mortgage program through MHP, which Deb, I know that you have a lot of experience with that. If you want to maybe quickly, if you have a chance to speak a bit to what that is.
It's a loan that allows for a 3% down payment. It is priced 30 basis points lower than whatever the Freddie Mac conforming rate is. So every week, Freddie Mac posts what their average conforming mortgage rate is. So in order for a lender to participate in the one mortgage, they have to agree to price that loan 30 basis points lower. So for example, if the interest rate was 7.5 as the average, then they would have to agree to price it at 7.25 or 7.2. So that would be the agreement the lender makes for that. So you can put a minimum down at 3%. It goes up to a 3-family property. With the one mortgage, there's a subsidy that is permitted if you're below 80% of median income that you can use for a single family and for a condo and a 2-family. So it's a product that if a person fits in that box, it's the best game in town. It's the best product out there. Then second to that, there's also Mass Housing. So Mass Housing also has subsidies, and they also have down payment assistance, and there's also grants and things. And all of this stuff can be stacked together with our $10,000 grant.
Yeah. And so my goal and my hope is to, at a bare minimum, create like a landing page, a web page for resources for folks that are trying to navigate all the different programs that are available to them. But beyond that, it would be great to, maybe formally establish partnerships with lenders. There are some cities that have done this, and I'm looking into how it works, where they have like.
There's actually a list of approved lenders right online for the city of Boston.
Yep, exactly. And so I do point people to that when they reach out and ask for what's available, or if they have questions, if they're applying for first-time home buyer but they haven't been pre-approved for a mortgage. I send them exactly that list, Deb, of who the 1+ lenders are. But maybe there's a possibility to do an RFQ or something for enter into a formal partnership with. For sure. So our hope is to help people kind of navigate that process, and we'll continue to do research on that and continue to welcome your feedback as you have it. But that's something I just wanted to update folks on. As always, I have a window for I wanted to mention as well that we have the upcoming event that I had sent everybody. And of course, I forgot to pull that up. Does anyone have that in front of them? The calendar invitation that I sent? But there's an event coming up on affordable housing trusts around the North Shore, and I invited everyone to come to that. I'll be going on behalf of everyone. It's in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to remind everyone that this is a chance to kind of learn more about what other trusts are doing, do some networking, gain some ideas, and so everyone's invited. And so if you'd like to come, please reach out. In terms of a space for other updates, a couple of things. First off, Dean, I don't know how much you want to or can say yet about, ongoing updates on RHA's work.
What I can say from the Revere Housing Authority is we're moving forward to reposition in 3 phases. One is to reposition our federal portfolio in a RAD conversion, which would then create an additional 175 Faircloth vouchers, which we could apply to building additional housing in the city. And then it would generate approximately $3 million worth of additional funding for the Housing Authority on the federal portfolio, which we have. 194 units spread out over Harris Street, Rose, Pomona, Hutchinson, and then the end of Coolidge and Upper Cushman. We have a project that we're looking on Shirley Ave where we would redevelop and repurpose a couple of three-family buildings and try to build a five-story building with about 26 units there. And then the third is we're doing a master plan currently for that Coolidge Constitution, kind of the 39 acres that are over there. And we'll be working with the public and city officials very shortly as we get through our planning process.
Thank you. The other quick update I would give from the city sort of development standpoint that you may have seen is that there is a developer who's potentially interested in a piece of property that's like directly adjacent to the Chelsea Housing Authority. That's on, I guess, technically Fenno Street in Chelsea, but it's a piece of property that's like tucked underneath the highway. I have a hard time explaining where it is, other than to say that you wouldn't know it's in Revere driving past it, or like even looking at a map, unless if you click on Google Maps or Apple Maps and click on Revere and it shows the outline of it, you'll see that it like extends just underneath the highway, and it butts up against the Chelsea Housing Authority property. So it's surrounded by housing, but it's this sort of undeveloped plot of land that is like weirdly zoned, and there's a few different challenges that need to be worked through, both for zoning and utilities and things like that. But there is an interest in doing a fully, 100% affordable project there, which, great in and of itself, but also because we have, as you may recall, our housing production plan set out a goal of, we had to have, I think it was 129 units of affordable housing approved within a year of ratifying the housing production plan, and then something like 250 approved within 2 years. We do not have any, since it was approved. We need to get moving on that in order to remain in compliance with our goals under 40B, or within our obligations rather, under 40B, under state law. So good opportunity for the community. To this point, they have not requested to come before the trust for any reason, but I'll let you all know if that changes. But just something to keep an eye on. I think we certainly would appreciate seeing an affordable project, given that we haven't had a lot of those, come through. They've mostly been market rate. So something to keep an eye on. I think that's all we had from sort of an updates standpoint, but any questions for me or for Dean on those pieces?
They follow the same procedures for the loan proposals that you showed before on the ADU. The properties are dated. This special project will be the same guidelines for the proposals that you showed before.
So if this developer was interested in applying for funding from the Affordable Housing Trust, then yes, that's exactly the type of proposal that I would envision going through this application process, where they would, identify that they wanted X, Y, and Z, that they needed it for X, Y, and Z reason, and this is why, and submit an application and come and speak to us. To this point, I don't believe they've requested anything from the Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm not sure if they intend to. But just wanted to put it on everyone's radar as something that's important to our overall affordability goals in the city. Other questions?
Joe, the neighborhood developer project that we were just a part of down by the beach, none of those units are being counted towards the permitting for affordable housing in the city at this time?
I believe that because they were already permitted like before the house. I believe they got their building. They got their permit before we approved the housing production plan, so I don't think so. But I could be wrong about that. They will be added to our SHI, but I'm not sure if they count as units that were approved in the year following the housing production plan. I might be wrong about that, so that's a good question, and I'll get back to you. But they are units that are going to be on the SHI, which is important because that's part of getting to our 10% that we're required to have under 40B. I think we're somewhere around 7% right now. You know, it's a number that's dipped a bit as more market rate housing has come on board. So it'll be good to note that and kind of where those units impact where we are relative to those goals. So thank you for that. Okay. Other questions? Okay, so with that, I'll leave just open if anyone has any other items that they want to put on the agenda, late items that didn't make it on, including anyone on Zoom. Okay. Well, seeing none, I'll just begin to wrap up by saying I appreciate everyone's patience. I know that we're all excited to see the senior repairs program move forward. I think this is going to be a great thing for the community. And we're excited to get it going. So thank you for walking through that application with me. And we have a lot that we're working on between that, the ADUs, and that open call for proposals. So thank you for all your work on this. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn for the month. Second? All right. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll meet back here in October.